Hi guys, welcome to COSC100 tutorial 10 exercise number 3. In this exercise we're going to get you to run your first Python program using the PyCharm integrated development environment. So in this question we've given you a little snippet of code here. You might recognize this from the lectures as the rectangle area example that we executed. Just so you can see that essentially it reads in a rectangle length and a rectangle width from a user, calculates the area and prints that back out to the console. So first of all we're going to copy this over to our Python program here. I'm going to create I've already created a Python file, so if you right click and go to new, you can create your Python file, and in here you would enter in rectangle area to create your Python file. I've already done this, so I'm just going to cut and paste my code in. You can see that it's that when I do this, everything's nice and syntax highlighted. As we walk through the code, the only little tricky things to remember are that the input function returns a string type value, and we need to convert that over to a floating point or at least an integer type value in order to perform mathematical operations. So we've done that in this situation by putting our call to the input function inside the float function, and the float function converts whatever value is returned by this function into a floating point number, so it can be used in our calculation. So if we go and run our example, so if we run rectangle area, so we run our program by selecting the file over in the project browser, right clicking and going run rectangle area, we can enter in our length and width and it'll produce the area for that one. So now we're going to modify our program so it finds the volume of a rectangular prism. Now you recall that in order to find the volume of a rectangular prism we need to multiply the length by the height by the length by the width by the depth of the rectangle or of the prism, and from that we can calculate and that'll give us the volume. So the first thing we need to do is modify our program so it grabs the depth of our rectangular prism. So we can do that by just simply dropping in the line of code provided. So essentially we're just reading in another value, the depth, in that example. We then need to go through and do our prism calculation. So we can see down here in step 3 we've got our prism calculation, and we're going to drop that into here. Now when I do this you'll notice that this rectangle area value that we've just replaced now has a squiggly red line on it, similar to what you see in most word processing software. So this indicates, and there's also a little red marker over on the side here, that there's some sort of error, and in this situation we're trying to use the rectangle area value, but it has no longer been initialized correctly. So we'll need to go and replace that with our prism volume value, and we can also replace the prompt. So if I go and drop the entire line of code in there, you can see that now our program, the little squiggly line is now gone because we're referring to a variable that already exists, and we can go and complete our program. So you should go through and update the prompts as well so they're more accurate. So I've given you some code here for you to go and execute. When we do this, we should now be able to run through and execute our code here. Oh, what's it think we've got? Go through and get rid of those bizarre characters around at the end here. So we should be able to now go and run our program. Oops, we've reached the end of the file. That's because we're missing a bracket. Sorry guys. So if we go and execute our file, you can see that we enter in our length, our height, and our depth. It'll calculate the volume of our prism. So that's a nice quick little exercise just to get you going here. I'm going to leave the advanced exercise for you to play around with. In the advanced exercise, you're implementing the error checking approach outlined in lecture 19 to force the user to only enter in numeric values. So essentially, all we need to do is put a while loop around each of these. So the while loop, so we'll put a while forever, while true, and we'll make sure that this is executed as part of our while loop. And then we just have an if statement in here. Oops, it should be prism. So prism length is and we have to remember to put our colon in, of course. So in this situation, we're using the same pattern that we saw in the lectures. We're reading in our value, and then we're using the isNumeric function. So the isNumeric function is a string function, and we have a string object being returned from our item here. Oops, I'll just go through, remove that. We'll need to make sure that later on we go through and we convert that back to a float, so we don't need to have that here. So if we run through, this is only partially implemented, but if we run through here and we attempt to enter in letters, it'll repeatedly ask us to enter in a numeric value until we do so. So that's the pattern of code that you need to apply to the other two variables in order to complete the advanced part of the exercise. And I'll let you run through and complete that yourselves. So that's all we've got for exercise number 3, guys. Thanks for listening.